So it's also my pleasure now to introduce Dave Peters, who you already know, and also Kate Johnston-Ataata, and they're going to do again a tandem act for us this morning. They're going to talk about the intersection of mental and physical health, and in particular Healthtalk Australia, and the value of an online tool like Healthtalk Australia. Dave, as you know, is a consumer consultant and one of the mainstays of the Equally Well movement here in Australia. Kate is a research fellow with RMIT, but also the coordinator of Healthtalk. So without further ado, I will hand over.
Thank you very much. Oh yeah, great. Thank you. Hi everyone. I just wanted to say thanks to Chris and Indigo for a fantastic talk. That was really inspiring. So, can we actually go back a slide? Yeah, thanks. My name's Kate and Dave is very familiar to you all. So this morning we're going to kind of do also a double presentation. In the first part, I'll speak about Healthtalk Australia and the value of health and illness experiences on the internet, and also a little bit about some of the intersections between physical and mental health that have emerged in our research. So then Dave will follow by sharing his experiences of being involved in one of our projects, as well as his reflections on his own journey with mental health and physical health. I'll then finish with some words of encouragement to anyone interested in collaborating with us on a Healthtalk project on this topic. Before I start, I just wanted to say or acknowledge the diverse and contested nature of language in the mental health field. So in this presentation, we'll mainly use the term lived experience of mental health, but occasionally we will use other words kind of common in other debates, but we do recognise that each term has its strengths and weaknesses depending on context, and that people have different preferences. So online health and illness experiences, why do they matter? I'll start at the bottom of the list that you see on this slide. So-called patient-centred care has become an increasing focus for health policy and services in recent years, with a lot of effort being put into collecting information about patient experiences. Stories of health and illness experiences, by contrast, are much broader than just patient experience information, which often is focused just on a specific health service or gathered through surveys. Nonetheless, personal stories contain rich data about people's interactions with the healthcare system, and they therefore contribute to the growing international evidence base of information about how people experience healthcare, which service providers and policymakers use to identify what is and isn't working in our healthcare systems. Shared online, these stories can reach far greater audiences. Moving to the second item on the list, personal accounts of health experiences are also valuable to health and allied health practitioners, giving them an insight into the perspectives of their patients, which, as we know, is rarely available in the short appointments common in busy health services. Finally, and for some of the reasons that Chris and Indigo touched on, and finally, health and illness experiences online obviously hold great value for other people living with those health conditions and their family and friends. Among other things, stories can expand people's understanding of their health condition, which may support better self-management and more informed decision-making. Personal health and illness experiences online can also contribute to feelings of solidarity among others in similar situations and foster empathy on the part of family and friends. Finally, the very act of telling one's story can be meaningful, particularly when told to a non-judgmental, respectful listener. So underscoring the importance of personal health and illness stories online, in 2012, a large-scale Pew Research Centre survey found that 1 in 4 respondents had accessed someone else's experience of health and medical issues online in the previous year. So I just want to underline that that's not health information, that's experiential personal stories. So given this demand, it's not surprising that health and illness experiences on the internet are now very common. And these are some of the places that they're available. So they often appear on health service provider organisations like NEMI, on advocacy and research organisations like Black Dog Institute, on individual blogs or vlogs that just people upload themselves, on social media, like pages like Mental Health Stories, on Facebook, and much more. Another place that health and illness experiences online can be found is Healthtalk Australia, which is now my pleasure to introduce. So we're a research consortium that was established in 2012, and our mission is to use the power of individual stories to understand and improve healthcare for all Australians, placing the person at the centre stage of healthcare improvement and reform. Healthtalk Australia is also a member of an international consortium of researchers based at universities across 13 countries in Europe, North America and East Asia, including Yale, the University of Freiburg in Germany, Seoul National University and the University of Zurich, and many others. Using a methodology developed at the University of Oxford, our core business involves conducting qualitative research on people's experiences of different health and illness conditions via narrative interviews recorded on film or audio. We then use the interview data that we collect to build public online health resources hosted on the Healthtalk Australia website. And these are used or designed to support and inform the three groups that I mentioned earlier. So people with lived experience and their family members and friends, health practitioners, service providers and policymakers. So far we've created 8 online resources which feature almost 350 stories, and we have one more site currently in development. Reflecting the significant expertise in mental health research of our team here at RMIT, 4 of our online resources are focused on mental health, as you can see on this slide. And internationally, there are 14 Healthtalk resources online which are focused on mental health, including depression, psychosis, eating disorders, and mental health in immigrant communities, among others. The Healthtalk methodology, I'll just briefly say a little bit about this, is detailed, rigorous, and proven. It's been tested in over 150 online resources over 19 years across 13 countries and 9 languages. For each project, we typically interview around 30 people who are carefully recruited to represent the widest range of demographic and sociocultural backgrounds, as well as experience of the health or illness condition in question. A very important role is played by our advisory group. We set one up for each project. It's closely involved in the research project from start to finish and comprises all key stakeholders relevant to that health condition, particularly people with lived experience, as Dave will talk about, family members, health practitioners, health service providers, policymakers and academics from a range of different disciplines, including medicine, social sciences, law, social work, creative arts and more. Another critical part of our methodology is partnering with industry. So each Healthtalk Australia project from its inception is designed in collaboration with our industry partners in terms of focus, scope and tailored outputs designed by our partners. They also help us with recruitment, technical expertise, advice about the research design, knowledge translation and promotion. And this slide shows some of our main collaborators in government, the NGO sector and health services, including some who've worked with us on multiple projects over the years. Finally, knowledge translation is a key priority for us as well, and some examples from our recent mental health and supported decision-making project include co-designed health information and education resources, such as fact sheets and mental health service guidelines on supported decision-making, which you can find on our website. Endorsement of our online resources by relevant professional societies. So the RANZCP, for example, have incorporated our online resources into their training on supported decision-making, which provides a very important insight into people with lived experiences, perspectives. The Victorian Department of Health and Human Services have linked to them on their websites and on annual reports, and all our project partners link to them as well. Finally, Healthtalk Australia websites for any educators out there are fantastic teaching resources. They are used in university courses currently in social work and sociology, and we know of a number of professional development initiatives designed by health services that have also drawn on them. And this little testimonial at the bottom is from someone at Helping Minds, which is the new name for RMIT. People who visit our website can provide comments and answer a short survey, and so that was from those. So what's unique about Healthtalk Australia and our online, health resources? Got a bit ahead of myself. It's our view that, I think it's also true, that no other platform provides personal stories of health and illness the way that we do. I've already first talked about the first two items on this list, but in addition to those, what's particular about our approach is that we pay very careful attention to participants' privacy and wishes regarding the presentation of their stories, and if you have any questions about that, we're happy to answer that. We solicit stories of health and illness experiences in the context of people's overall lives. We analyse and present people's experiences by theme as well as individual story. We present people naturalistically, and obviously not just on video, but also audio or text. We combine experiential and health information, making our resources kind of like a one-stop shop. They have very extensive links to other services and resources online. We all have all of our health-related information throughout the entire site checked by clinicians and people who are familiar with the research. We seek to present stories and health information in a non-judgmental manner. And finally, we accept no commercial funding to preserve the credibility of our resources. So turning now to the topic of this symposium, I'd just like to say a little bit about some of the intersections of health and physical health and mental health that have emerged in the stories that we have gathered. So I'll first just briefly introduce two of our projects that are particularly relevant. Our mental health and supported decision-making project and our first ever Healthtalk Australia project on depression and recovery. So I think I just want to point out Renata Kakanovic, who's here down the front, and Lisa Brophy over there. Lisa and Renata, Renata's the lead investigator on both projects and Lisa was a co-investigator on the first one. So taken together, these projects reveal that what is labelled as mental illness is very much an embodied experience. Whether in relation to experiencing symptoms, interacting with health services, undergoing treatment and experiencing both the intended and unintended effects of that treatment, or trying to adopt lifestyle interventions, participants described these experiences as always embodied. And the converse also applies. The stories that we've collected on our research on so-called physical health conditions, which include ageing, pregnancy and birth, early menopause and addiction, had very clear emotional and psychological dimensions in those narratives, perhaps most recognisably in the case of perinatal depression. So given this seeming inseparability of mental health and physical health, we believe that not only is it unproductive to look at them in isolation, but as this initiative equally well recognises, we must in fact now start putting the interlinkages and overlaps at the centre of our research and practice. So by way of illustration, I'll now share with you 3 short clips from some of our online resources that illustrate some of the different ways in which physical health and mental health can intersect. Each one is about 1 to 2 minutes, and they're from 3 of our projects. So the first clip is from our depression project, and we'll hear from Ralph. So hopefully this will work. So just bear with us for a minute. It did work when we did a practice just before. No, that's okay.
Skip to come back to the videos or?
Yeah. Okay.
A bad day would be just miserable, going to bed crying for no reason at all, with the light on because I didn't want the light off. Not wanting to go out, not wanting to have friends around, not going to play tennis. In fact, even at one stage I couldn't bring myself around to plan a holiday. Just felt too daunting to have a holiday. This was in America, but due to come up to the summer vacation, and I wanted to go on holidays. Also, the family did, and I thought, because that's what we're there for, besides work. But I thought, I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Don't know. Strange country, driving, other side of the road, new places, I can't do it. Well, there's depression, of course, and there's anxiety, panic attacks, there's the crying spells. There was the tingling in the hands or the arms, numbness in the back, numbness in the legs, difficulty in walking, feeling that my gait's not quite right, not sleeping, of course, feeling angry, uncoordinated sometimes.
So that short fragment from Ralph's story reveals the multi-layered emotional, physical and social aspects of his experience of depression. It affected every aspect of his life. It also highlights the significant difficulties that people can experience attending to and enacting everyday practical activities when unwell. This points to the need for those around people experiencing depression or other mental health conditions, including health practitioners, to engage with and understand the distress that people feel and the effects of that distress, particularly when promoting lifestyle interventions and other forms of self-care. Next we hear from Kate, who was interviewed for our Emotional Experiences of Early Parenthood project. So Kate experienced depression several years earlier, before having children, and was on guard against its recurrence when she became a mother. And she talks now.
I think one of the things that came out of my first period of depression was just how important exercise was to me. Although one of the signs that I was becoming depressed was that I was exercising frantically. I lost a whole lot of weight and my period stopped and I got way too thin, but I was, swimming 1,500 metres and running about 6Ks every day. So it became clear that I was using the endorphins from that to cope, which was too much. I was doing way too much, and not eating, just drinking instead. It was this awful kind of cocktail. But I did, when I toned that all down, it became clear that exercise was something that I needed to schedule in. And although it's terribly hard when you're tired, that's the one thing that I will.
Yeah, I spoke to staff.
The next one. Thank you. So that was Kate, and I just cut her clip a little bit short because I think that she'd made the main point, and I think we're running a bit late. But I just wanted to comment that I think her story highlights that an intense focus on exercise at one stage in her life was actually a sign of depression, while at a later stage, as she went on to talk after the rest of the clip, was that making time for a more moderate exercise regime actually helped her to moderate her mental health. So this is an important reminder to all of us to be sensitive to the nuanced connections between embodied, physical and mental experiences. So the final clip, which I won't play, but you can look at it on our website, is from Luana from the Mental Health and Supported Decision Making Project, where she talks about her difficulties conveying her distress over an upsetting side effect from her psychiatric medication to a psychiatrist in the context of negotiating a CTO. So that's it for me, and I'll pass on to Dave. And just by a very brief introduction, Dave was a member of the advisory group on the Mental Health and Supported Decision-Making project, and later on volunteered to become an interviewee in the project as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. And really, thank you for such a wonderful introduction of the project and the work that we did a few years ago. It's well worth checking out the site. I became involved in the project through my involvement in a service called Near My National, which I guess as part of my journey of recovery introduced me to the idea of using my experiences of sickness and recovery to inform service development and improve practices, and hopefully, the ultimate aim of improving outcomes for people like myself. That became such a big and sort of fundamental part of my recovery journey, sort of finding that meaning and purpose again in life. Talking about being as part of the project, initially becoming involved in the steering committee, which was made up of about 100 or so people from various stakeholders, whether it be services, funding bodies, academics, carers, and lived experience organisations or lived experience advocacy groups. It was an amazing collective, difficult to navigate and difficult to, I guess, make sure that we cover an agenda and, keep it productive and purposeful in meeting. 100 people in a room is somewhat difficult to have a lively and purposeful discussion when everyone has their own views about what is right, sometimes competing views about what is right, but it was handled really, really well. And it was part of that process where I found out, I guess, a bit more about the interview process and the questions that were going to be asked. And I really wanted to have an opportunity to share my story of what I found useful in recovery and talking with the various medical people in my life about supporting me to make decisions, informed decisions, sort of building on what Indigo and Chris were talking about. Supporting those decisions to, I guess, the best of the limitations of the Mental Health Act. And, having been both in hospital and on a treatment order, I can say that it's not, it can be very difficult to navigate this sort of minefield of trying to make informed choices when your rights aren't necessarily being encouraged. I guess having experienced both ends of what I consider to be supported decision-making, at one stage, when I was on a treatment order, the registrar was not terribly conducive to the idea of discussing alternative medications. I think at one point I brought up the idea that, the medication were causing some really undesirable side effects, and could we at least sort of open a discussion, a dialogue about sort of looking at alternatives. And that was sort of viewed as non-compliant attitude, and the order was extended by 3 months. On the other end of the spectrum, about a couple of years later, working with my GP, sort of recognising, I guess, that medication did play an ongoing role in helping me manage my illness, and wanting to, I guess, try and balance the best of the medication positive effects as well as the risk of negative side effects. I had a really great and wonderful discussion supported by my GP, who helped, I guess, educate me a little bit about the different types of antidepressant medication and antipsychotic medications. And we had probably about 3 or 4 one-hour sessions talking about, I guess, the pros and cons about the different types of medications, experiences of patients that he'd worked with in the past, as well as the information he had from the pharmaceutical organisations, and sort of helped me come to the point where I could make an informed choice, trying to base that on what I understood about the possible risky side effects. And as I said, that was quite a lengthy process, but looking back now, I can see that I don't know if I could have made an informed choice otherwise. It's quite intimidating, sort of being offered all this information about potential medication side effects and trying to balance that with the possible mental well-being, as I saw it. I saw it a bit of a payoff. Do I look after my mental well-being by taking medication and just sort of destroy or have it deteriorate my my physical health, or do I look after my whole of person and physical health and possibly risk, getting into a risky space of mental unwellness where perhaps I might be at risk of harming myself or other people? And I think that's a sort of an ongoing challenge where it's a constant negotiation. I think, as Indigo mentioned before, that sometimes medications can have a really drastic impact. And at one point, I was on a medication that was supposed to be dual sort of effect of chronic pain relief and antipsychotic, and I think I put on 45 kilos in an 8-month period, which is really demoralising and upsetting. Not just about putting on the weight, but how it makes you feel, how it makes you operate day to day. And it's something I still struggle with. I've changed medications, but being on a range of medications that affect my metabolism, I'm struggling to make any changes that will help me lose that weight that I gained so quickly. So this project really, I guess, helped me give some insight into the differences between being supported to make informed choice and the alternative, I guess, which is having that choice made for you. Not necessarily with your best interests, I guess, the best interests of the community and risk of doing harm and sort of, following clinical care guidelines, but not necessarily in the best interests of your own personal recovery. And I can say that this being involved in this project helped give me that insight into appreciating the experience I had with my GP, as well as wanting to tell other people about what being supported to make difficult decisions could be like. And hearing other people's stories about how they coped with making difficult decisions and how they might have been supported by the people in their life was really sort of a fundamental in sort of gaining that understanding and gaining, I guess, other tips and guidelines and helpful coping mechanisms from other people. I think it's a fantastic website, and I think that I really encourage anyone to take a look when they get a chance. Now, I think we might open the floor for any questions if there are any. Oh, right, there's one more slide, sorry. Whoops, uh-oh. I've done it now, I shouldn't be trusted with the clicker. That's all right, I'll welcome Kate back.
All right, so
Take it away from me, please.
that's okay. The last slide actually had my email address on it, which is important information. But we're here at Morning Tea, myself and Renata. We're very keen to talk to anyone who's interested in collaborating with us on a potential Healthtalk Australia project looking at this issue of the intersections of mental health. There you go, thank you very much. With physical health. We'd encourage you to have a look at our website, and we also have at the registration desk some colourful postcards, so feel free to pick up one of those. And we're also on Twitter. So thank you very much. And yeah, questions?
So thanks very much, Dave and Kate, and I'm sure, as they've said, both folk would love you to catch up with them later if you have some questions, want to have some conversation. Anyone have a burning question that they'd really like to ask now? I've intimidated you all because we're short of time. Can I just ask you to thank again, please, Dave and Kate,